We have some breaking news. The Boston Celtics have just robbed the NBA, and following what has been a crazy last 15 to 20 minutes for the Celtics team, they just made an absolutely elite signing. But not only that, they made a trade surrounding Gorgas Niang. We're going to break down both the trade and the robbery that the Celtics just pulled off surrounding a signing. A ton to go over today, folks. But before you knew it all, if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Celtics content. You guys have been absolute beasts with the support, so make sure to hit the subscribe button. Thank you guys again, folks. Craziness just broke out, and let's dive into the most recent piece of news. But in the span of 10-15 minutes, the Celtics traded Gorgas Niang and then signed Chris Boucher, as Shams just dropped a huge report here. Free agent Chris Boucher has agreed to a 1-year, $3.3 million contract with the Boston Celtics. Agent Sam Permo of Rock Nation tells ESPN Boucher lands a guaranteed deal with the Celtics and is expected to have a significant role in the front court. Folks, this is an absolute steal for this Boston Celtics team. Just an absolute steal, and it came after they traded Gorgas Niang, which is kind of crazy in itself, but you can see this here. Boucher departs Toronto, where he has the all-time franchise record in points, rebounds, blocks, minutes, and games played off the bench. He also was the Raptors' last remaining member of the 2019 NBA championship team. Folks, they just got an absolute stud in Chris Boucher, and Chris Boucher is someone who, when he actually is healthy, which has been a lot, but when he's actually been playing, I mean, he got benched by Nick Nurse a lot, benched by Darko Rajakovic. He's been very good. As recent as last year, in 50 games all off the bench, he averaged 10 points a game and 5 rebounds. We think back to a couple of years ago, 9 points. Of course, in 2020, 13.6 points a game. And keep in mind, all of this was happening when, obviously, the Raptors were good and then bad a little bit, but this was without Chris Boucher playing a lot of minutes. He was averaging 17 minutes a game on his career, and he wasn't really treated right by the Raptors. He got benched a ton, wasn't fitting their regime, whatever you want to call it. This is absolutely crazy. It is ludicrous. It is, quite frankly, surprising. I didn't think they were going to be able to actually get this deal done. We heard about Ben Simmons, probably takes him out of the race as for that. A ton of different things. But at the end of the day, not only do they pull off a robbery by getting a fantastic bench player who can honestly end up starting, which we'll dive into in a minute here, but they did so without having to obviously make a trade, at least for Chris Boucher, because that team, 7-10 minutes ago, I mean, things are crazy. The Boston Celtics are trading Gorgas Niang and 2 second-round picks to the Utah Jazz for rookie RJ Lewis Jr. Now, I'll circle back to Boucher in a minute here. This is what opened up everything. So you can see here, Gorgas Niang was traded, and at the time, I literally had a video recorded that I had to scrap like 2 minutes ago throughout the whole trade. I was wondering why they gave up 2 second-round picks in order to, get rid of Gorgas Niang, and we can dive into that a little bit. But what that did was ultimately reduce their payroll by a total of $50 million. That was by, of course, this is before the Boucher signing. This is by, trading Gorgas Niang. But at the same time, they're now just $1.7 million above the first apron and $9.4 million above the luxury tax line. Now, they did just sign Chris Boucher, and again, it's a 1-year, $3.3 million deal, but they shed a ton of salary within the move for Gorgas Niang, and they got nothing back, right? RJ Lewis, we'll dive into in a minute. He's an undrafted, he's an undrafted 6'7" guard, I believe it is. But they opened up enough cap space now, I guess, to where they could go ahead and actually, essentially what they did is they swapped Niang for Boucher, and then obviously you have Boucher's veteran minimum cap hit adjustment, which is $2.3 million. Basically, they saved $6 million for 2 second-round picks, which I think in itself isn't terrible. I think that's pretty solid, but I think the real robbery here is I much prefer Boucher as a player, as an individual from what we can see online and social media, and I think he's going to be much better for the Celtics team than Gorgas Niang will be. I'm very confident in that, and obviously, Niang's been good, right? He's been good at times, similar players in the sense of they're both bench, bigs, but I would much rather Chris Boucher. I just really would. And obviously, similar usage. Some people maybe would prefer Gorgas Niang. I'm all in on Boucher. They basically gave up 2 second-round picks to save $6 million and replace Boucher with Gorgas Niang. It's kind of the easiest way to look at this. And when I initially made the video, it didn't really make a ton of sense. But of course, now once they got Boucher, I think he sits a lot better in Joe Mazzulla's system. He can shoot the 3 ball. He can play really good, not necessarily post defense, but he can block some shots. And he struggled a little bit over the past few years defensively. But again, he really didn't have a huge role on the Boston Celtics team, right? Or on the Toronto Raptors team. Like, he would play for a bit and then, get taken out. And then, he'd play really well and then he'd get benched. Like, all these different things. It got very, very, rough for Boucher. You give him a fresh start on a perfectly fitting team now. They have a ton of serviceable players now in the front court. You have Sam Hauser. You have Neemias Queta. Of course, out of this, Gorgas Niang is gone. You have Chris Boucher in. I absolutely love it. And of course, they had to get a big man at some point, and they ultimately did it. And I know a lot of people probably, I follow the Raptors pretty closely as well. I know a lot of people probably don't, follow Boucher as much, even though it is an Eastern Conference team, of course. He is really good. He is really good. He can shoot the three ball really well. And I cannot express how I think in Joe Mazzulla's masterclass system, of course, he played under Nick Nurse, he played under Darko Rajakovic, but you put him under the mastermind that is Joe Mazzulla, I think he's going to absolutely shine. I truly believe that. And I think it's going to be something that's super exciting. And not only shine, I think he's going to be very, very good. And at 3.3 million, obviously you have the little hit, the 2.2 million. You're saving money. And that was the biggest thing here. They saved $6 million after all the complications. And you did give up 2 second-round picks. Keep in mind, these are going to be fairly late second-round picks, we would assume, because, at this point, again, Gorgas Niang, there was some stuff, he came out in a podcast and said, Boston Celtics fans don't really like him, all these different things. I think at this point, no one really wanted, Gorgas Niang. I don't even know if Gorgas Niang wanted to be here, but clearly he had, he didn't want to be in Boston, but clearly he had minimal value, right? If you had to give up second-round picks to get someone to take on his contract in the Utah Jazz, clearly they did not want the they did not want Gorgas Niang on the team, even beyond just saving the money. You had to give up 2 future seconds, which is kind of funny because we think back to the start of this offseason when everything started transpiring with Kristaps Porziņģis, Jrue Holiday. I thought they were going to have to give up assets to get off of the Jrue Holiday contract. They didn't. They ultimately got Anthony Simons and what was supposed to be a second-round pick, of course, before that got dismayed because of the failed physical or the altered physical by Jrue Holiday. But ultimately, they did their job, right? Now, again, this isn't updated. This was updated after the trade for Gorgas Niang, not the Boucher stuff. And we'll have another video coming out on, some more things. At the end of the day, they're in a very unique scenario right now where you have an okay team, right? And you have a decent team. You have a decent front court depth now. You add Chris Boucher to it. I think it's going to be a bit of a retool year, but an ability to still compete in the Eastern Conference. And also, for those curious about RJ Lewis Jr., I believe he's a 6'7" guard. He got undrafted, then signed to a 2-way deal with the Utah Jazz. Also, I don't want to completely take away from it. Maybe Brad Stevens is really high on RJ Lewis Jr., and that's why it's another part of the reason. Obviously, the main reason was to save money, to open up, to sign Chris Boucher and be able to still save about $6 million. And they obviously prefer Chris Boucher as a player, or else they wouldn't have traded him for $6 million. But maybe this factors into it as well. He had a very good year for St. John's last year, a ton of accolades, a ton of awards. It's going to be interesting to see what they do, not only right now, but going forward. And I'm excited now. This is going to be an interesting team. You have some interesting depth, and that's the biggest thing. And I truly believe this is going to end up being one of the biggest robberies of the offseason thus far. Is this going to be the Chris Boucher deal, simply because of the fact that he's such a good player and hasn't been able to be used properly in systems, and also just hasn't been given the minutes to shine. He is 32, not a ton of development to do, but he's going to be a great player, and this is going to end up being a robbery for the Celtics.